Hi guys, welcome to the channel. Today we're gonna do a tutorial on how to make a Psytrance kick using kick 2, and it's gonna sound something like this. So before we get started again, I want to mention that there is no perfect way to make a kick. It really, depends on like anyone's taste, but I'll just show you the way I do it. Also, I kind of find it hard to create the perfect kick only within kick 2, so we will actually, synthesize our kick within kick 2 as a starting point, and then we'll, do some processing on top of it in order to get the effect that we actually wanted to create within our mix. Okay, so when we first open kick 2, we're going to be facing something like this. But before we touch anything, we have to figure out how long our kick should be. We're writing our track in 144. Basically, the Psytrance kick sits within the first 2/16ths of each beat. So if I'm looking at, let me make this full screen. So if I'm looking at, 1, 2, 3, 4 16th notes over there, the kick is going to populate right here, and the bass is going to be on the last 3. So now we have to figure out how long these 2/16th notes are. For that, we have a pretty simple calculation. So I'm going to do a quick math here. We basically take the amount of milliseconds within a minute. So we have 60 seconds in a minute, and in each second there is 1,000 milliseconds. So it's going to be 60 by 1,000. We have 60,000 milliseconds within a minute, and we're writing our track in 144. So we're going to be dividing this by the BPM that we're writing our track in. So 60,000 by 144. So this is giving me the amount of one beat, but our kick is half a beat. So you just kind of divide this by 2. So this is the amount of how many milliseconds our kick should be, right? This is one way to find out how long our kick should be. Another way to do that in Cubase, basically all you have to do is to select the length of your kick note and then highlight it and right click and press on seconds. So it was bars and beats. And then you just right click and seconds. You can see here it says 208 as well. This is how long we're going to set our kick to be within kick 2. So here, let's go back to kick 2. As you can see, we have a length measure here. We'll just drag it back to somewhere about 208. If you hold on Control and then do that within your mouse, you can get a finer adjustment within kick 2. When you open kick 2, you get, you get a design of some sort of a kick. Let's just hear how this sounds by itself. So as you can see, it's bad. Basically, what I want to do is to just scrap all of it and then do something completely from scratch. So I will delete all the nodes and all the effects that we have on this side. Let's see, deleting all the nodes. So no EQ, no distortion, no compressor, no clicks, 0 length. Kick, as we know, it's something that starts from a really high pitch and then it goes down to lower pitches. And so we kind of have to just, shape the waveform of our kick. Before we start designing our kick, it's really good to have an oscilloscope just so you can see how the waveforms are shaping as you're, synthesizing your kick. In this case, we can use something that's called Megascope. So this thing basically is going to show you, how your kick is shaping, and you can see all the, you can see all the waveforms and how they're getting affected as you're putting, different effects and stuff. And I'll just demonstrate it for you and see how you can, see the waveforms here. You're basically seeing the same thing with kick 2 right now, but as we shape our kick after we do the, first synthesis within kick 2, this thing is going to come really handy. So let's close it out for now and start with shaping the pitch of our kick first. Before we start with the higher pitch of our kick, let's go to the end of it. So this note needs to be the key that you're writing your track in. I'm writing my track in G sharp, so I just put it over there. And then, I'll work it kind of backwards and see how I can shape it down to G sharp. Also, I'm writing my track in G sharp minor, and I found that it is helpful to stick to the thirds and fifths when you are shaping your note envelopes, and I'll show what I mean right quickly here. So G sharp is my first note in the G sharp minor scale. This may require some, music theory knowledge, but it's pretty basic. So let's go over a, quick rundown of how we kind of do this, and then we can just put some nodes around and then see, what kind of sound we have, and then we can fine tune it going forward. Okay, I came up with something like this at the end. Let's just hear how this sounds. So one thing I found out that's problematic with kick 2 is that when I set my final note here to G sharp 1, which is supposed to be the fundamental of my kick, it kind of skews it for some reason. So I'll show you what I mean here. If I open up my FAT filter, you'll see that my fundamental is supposed to be somewhere here, because this is G sharp 1. But it kind of goes to a higher frequency. I don't know why, but so as you can see, it goes like an octave higher. To fix that, I basically just take this a whole octave down. So I have it on a G sharp 0 here, and when I play it, you'll see that my fundamental is going to start showing up on G sharp 1 on so that's just something that happened to me. I just wanted to show you guys. It might happen to you as well. This is the pitch version, pitch design of our kick. Let's go to our amp design now. There is, two fundamental parts to designing your kick within kick 2. The first part is your pitch. The second part is your amp. We're kind of done with the pitch for now, and we'll just do the amp. For the amp, we I don't like that super clicky attack at the beginning, so I'll try to tame it by putting this down a bit, and then, but I still want to hear that, right? So I still want to hear a little bit of the kick, so I kind of pull it all the way up here, and then somewhere along the way where I have this node, maybe I'm looking at here somewhere about like 200 hertz between 440 and 156. So I kind of want to take that part down to get rid of that muddiness kind of. And then from then on, what I want to do is I want to, ramp it up, because I want to hear the sub. As we said before, our kick starts from a higher pitch, and it goes down to, lower frequencies. So we kind of want to hear that lower frequency in our mix. And with the amp envelope, what you do is you just push it up, You just push it up like that. And then here, we can create something like this. So, we have like more of the low end. But let's just hear how this sounds with the pitch and amp envelopes synthesis together. Now the design portion of our kick within kick 2 is kind of complete. What we want to do here is to generate a WAV file right here under render, and then you can just drag and drop it to a new channel in Cubase. So you basically just drag it and drop it right here. So I want to show you how this kick is shaped right now. So this is our kick, and I will show you the reference kick that I had looked at before, just so I can create something more compatible. If you compare these two kicks, we can see that now they're pretty similar, just the way that they're shaped and everything. And that means we're good to go with our processing. That means we did a good job in kick 2, and now we can kind of adjust our kick to taste and I will just start doing that right now. And the first thing I do with my kick is that I add some multiband compression to it to make the low end more punchier, more like just in your face, you know, or like in your heart. So for this effect, we use Fab Filter per MB. What we do is we create a band in the low end, and then we kind of stretch it to maybe 200. And so at the moment, this compressor is responding to wherever it's set to, but you can actually change it to respond to a different frequency and then kind of, you know, get the reference from there. And in this instance, we basically change it to free. And now with this, you know, line kind of thing, I can tell Fab Filter, hey, get your response, frequency response from here, maybe to here. And this is, of course, you're gonna have to adjust it to your taste. Another thing before we get started, in order to not affect the phase of our kick, we set this to a linear phase. So let's just hear it with this on and off and see if you can hear, you know, some sort of a difference. I don't know if you guys could hear, you know, the punchiness that it brings to the low end when we enable it. So all I do here is to push up the range a little bit so it responds to these frequencies to, you know, compress it in a higher range. And then the attack is kind of high because we still want that clickiness. We want this in our lower end, so you don't have to put the attack really fast. All right, that's the first part to processing our kick. The second part is going to be a little bit of EQing. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, our mode before we get started should be a linear phase. Again, we don't want to affect the phase of our kick. This one I kind of leave it at medium. My computer is a little bit old, so I guess you can push it. I'm not sure how much of a difference it makes. But what I do to start with is to tame the lower frequencies. So we increase the punch, but you know, we don't want it to, you know, muddy up, especially like the subs. So what I do is maybe take out from 20 something, maybe leave it here. After we cut down it a little bit, we want to increase it a bit more. So I'll show you what I mean. So again, since it's the low end, maybe it's harder to hear for you in your laptops or whatever, but if you have like a good studio monitors or like a, you know, sub monitor, it'll be a lot easier to hear these changes, or just like really good headphones would work too. But the low end is really hard to hear, which is why I try to do a lot of, you know, enabled and disabled of the effects. The second EQ we want to do is to increase our, you know, high end a little bit, and there's a dip in our kick that we kind of want to raise up. I'll show you what I mean right now. So let me play this and then I'll kind of point out where I see that dip in the kick. Second to the last thing I'm gonna do is to bring in my bass line and just see how my phase alignment works with my bass line. It's a big issue not to have your kick and bass aligned perfectly. And for this specific example, I already have my bass line, you know, pre-made. Maybe it's not going to be the perfect example for it, but I'll just try to adjust my kick to my bass line without actually, you know, messing it up too much. And at least it'll be a good example for you guys to see, just so, you know, next time you make your kick and bass, you kind of, you know, synthesize them together, you just keep that in mind that the phases should kind of, you know, align well together. Let's bring in our bass here. So I just brought in my bassline here. It's a pretty well processed bassline. Remember I told you guys about having this oscilloscope? Now we're going to actually use it on our sidekick in order to see how our phase lines are aligning. So as we said, at the start of the video, we have our kick sitting in the first two 16th notes of our beat, and the bass kind of starts with the second 16th note, and then it takes over for the last two. So right here in this portion, I can maybe highlight it right here. Let's see. So this portion of our kick and bass needs to be phase aligned, just so there are like not much clashes. As I said, this won't be a perfect example, but I'll just show you how I kind of maybe try to fix it a little bit. So Megascope is a really good plugin, and I'll leave a link down below for you guys if you want to check it out. What this does basically, it just shows you how your waveforms work and how they kind of align to one another, and I'll show you what I mean. So I just stopped our oscilloscope here, and basically what we're going to check is if there are any like phase cancellations. I can see that it's not too bad, considering the fact that we didn't actually design our bass according to our kick in this case. But like right here, I see maybe one part there where there might be phase cancellation. The rest is looking pretty good, and let's try to get this more aligned maybe by using a plugin. We don't want to overuse, but let's try it. So this is a phase alignment tool by Oxango. You got to make sure that you actually enable force mono here, and I'm gonna stop freezing this. So let's just try to align our kick and bass. All right, so maybe this wasn't like the greatest example as far as the kick and bass phase alignment goes, but it's just something to be mindful of when you are, synthesizing your kicks and basses. Once you have them, phase correlated, it's just gonna make a whole difference in your track, especially in Psytrance, because we have our kick and bass throughout the entire track, and these little details create like a huge difference. And before we get this thing wrapped up, I want to mention two more things. The first thing is being how our kick gets a little longer after we process it a little bit. We put some effects to it, and I'll show you what I mean right now. So here we have our kick, and let me solo it, and I'll just show you how our oscilloscope kind of shows us that it's bleeding into the third 16th note of our beat, which is something we don't want, because if you look at right here, we want our bass line to completely kind of take over our mix from then on, and I'll show you what I mean. So if you can look at right here, we actually have a little bit of waveform going over the half wave line, and that's something we don't want, as we mentioned again. To overcome this, what I do is that I actually render my process kick into a new track in Cubase. So let's do that. So we rendered our kick, and if you can just look at right here, we actually do see that our kick is bleeding into where our bass is kind of sitting. So I will just clean this up manually. So here, in order to avoid any clipping issues, we want to, just fade it out right here. So we can do something like this. So let's just hear our process kick and our bass line. All right, that's sounding pretty good. And I just want to show you one last thing, which is to have our kick go to a bus. And then what I do is So basically my bass is routed to this bass extension bus and my kick is routed to this kick extension. What I do is I route these to the same bus and I call it KMB master bus. So let me color it differently. So both our kick and bass is basically routed into this red master bus over here. And what I do to kind of gel kick and bass together is to add a distortion. With our distortion, we want to do linear phase because we don't want to mess up our phasing, especially now that this is applying to both kick and bass together. And let's just hear how this sounds. Okay, so as you can see, it kind of brings that low end into more of like a gelled status where, you know, we hear the separation between low end and like higher mids to be more gradual. It's just an effect that I use, and you know, it's of course your personal taste, but I just wanted to show how I kind of process it. And one last thing I want to do is to let me hide these unnecessary channels here. I was basically looking at my levels. So when I'm mixing my kick and bass, I try to keep them, you know, within like -12 together. And if I bring my, you know, analyzer here, so just look at this portion over here, the LUFS. I try to basically keep it up to, you know, -12 dB on the LUFS section, which is on the right hand side right here. So as you saw it over there, it's quite high. So what I want to do to combat that is to just basically take down my kicks levels and kind of just play with it to see how I can get it down to, you know, that -12 dBA range. All right, guys, I hope this was helpful to you. I know that there are a plethora of ways to make it Psytrance kick. You know, it's definitely one of those things that, you know, depends on your taste, how you like it, how you like your frequencies, how you like your attack, how you like your, you know, punch or the body of your kick. This is just the way I kind of do it from scratch. But also one thing to keep in mind, I think it's really important to think about your kicks and basses together. This was just a kick tutorial and I'm working on a bass tutorial as well. Hopefully I'll be able to kind of combine those two in the future. So yeah, hopefully this tutorial was helpful and I look forward to seeing you in the next tutorial.